What is up, everybody? This is Chase, and welcome back to the Wellness Center podcast, where we are destigmatizing mental health one episode at a time. Guys, we are here to celebrate another amazing life, to share another amazing story, and to teach you some more amazing skills that you can take with you into your weekend to help you cope. Guys, I'm super excited for my guest today. Just in the few minutes I've had conversation with this lady, as well as reading her bio before, this lady is amazing. She is phenomenal. I am so excited to have her share her story today, guys. This is going to be one for the record book. So please make sure to tune in all the way through the whole episode, because you're going to want to hear this one, guys. You're going to want to hear her story. You're going to want to know the lessons that she's going to teach you. It's truly going to be phenomenal. So guys, before we get started, I do have my few big asks of you. Of course, the first, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're a big YouTuber, if that's where you're listening to this show, every subscriber helps. Every subscriber helps me, help you, and help the people out there in the world that need to hear these lessons. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Again, our goal is 500. We're currently at about 230. So we are well on our way to hitting our goal, guys. Huge growth from where we started the podcast. My next big ask of you is, if you are on Spotify or Apple or any other podcasting service, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review at the end of this episode, just to let us know how Niki did. Whether you love it or you hate it, leave us a 5-star review and let us know why. So guys, without further ado, I am super excited. We are going to bring this lady on. So by way of epic introduction for her, she is a health and wellness professional with a public health degree and a functional health coach certification. She has overcome health challenges like PCOS, Lyme's disease, eating disorders, and abusive relationships. She's an advocate of holistic healing through diet, lifestyle changes, and supplementation, blending alternative and Western medicines, which is huge. She's an engaging speaker, sharing personal stories and scientific insights to empower others. And of course, she's thriving, medication-free, and focused on helping others achieve optimal well-being. So without further ado, we have Niki Wolfe on the show.
It's gonna be a fine day today, I can see. It's gonna be a fine day today, I can see. Gonna be a fine day today for you and me.
Niki, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to kind of share the story and hopefully provide hope for some of your listeners who maybe have gone through similar experiences.
And I'm really excited to have you on. Obviously, you are super credentialed. I know you're super successful and so busy. So it means the world to me that you're actually taking time to come on my little show. But Niki, so just so we can get to know you a little bit better, would you be willing to give us just a few cookie cutter answers as to who you are?
Absolutely. So, first off, I am a mom of almost 2. So we have an 18-month-old and then a baby boy on the way. So we're really excited about that. I'm a woman of God. I work in marketing and communications. As far as kind of who I am, I'm very passionate. I love athletics and being outdoors. We'll dive in a little bit today, but I have a history kind of in the medical field, and it really pushed me to look for alternative approaches to healing. And so I would say my passion from a very early age was just health in general, and how I can not only survive, but thrive, and how I can help others achieve the same thing.
And I am so excited to dig into all of that today. Thank you. And congratulations on the pregnancy, by
Thank
the way.
you.
That is huge. So you have a baby
Yeah.
boy, is that right?
So I have a baby girl currently, but then a baby boy on the way. So we'll have one of each.
Hey, I started with a boy and have a girl now. So
Oh
I've
my
got
gosh.
my 2. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
so when are you due, if you don't mind me asking?
In February. So a few months away.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
excited.
it's my wife. She's pregnant as well with our third. And so
Oh my goodness.
are you nervous from going from 1 to 2?
Not at all. Honestly, we have a village, which is incredible, and we're
Yes.
incredibly blessed with that. I honestly was kind of hoping for another girl. And so, there was a lot of processes of feeling that. But now getting a boy, I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll try for a third. But my family and I are all uprooting and moving states at the end of next year. So a lot of new adventures, but it's funny because that's nothing new for our family. With our first daughter being born within 2 weeks, she was born. We moved. My husband graduated his master's program. Just so much happens, and it seems like we
Yeah.
want to like create the most chaotic schedules in bringing new life to this world. But I guess I'm not nervous. I'm excited, and I know maybe I can come back and like laugh at myself saying this, but I feel like in some ways it's kind of like dogs. I know it's gonna be terrible, but hear me out. Where when you have two, they entertain each other. They can
Yes.
occupy each other. Granted, it's going to be incredibly way more difficult in many ways, but then I think in other ways it's going to be, I mean, more exciting. They'll again entertain each other a little bit. It's just I think this is a part of the adventure of life, and I think one thing that we'll get into is like it's not always going to be crazy highs and everything going smoothly.
Right.
There's going to be chaotic bits, and I'm just excited for this next chapter.
Yeah, I love that, like, and it's kind of a Buddhist teaching, right? That you can't understand real joy, real happiness, unless you understand real pain and real misery.
Hmm. Hmm.
100% true. And I also love that you mentioned like that you're kind of like bunching your chaos together, right? Like you have kids and you move, you have kids and you move. I think that's just a normal young adult, young parent thing. Because I know, like, when my son was born, we were moving and going on trips and businesses and all the chaos, right? Our daughter was born, chaos, and this third kid's about to be born, and there's more chaos coming in our
Mm.
lives too. So I do think that's a totally normal human experience that you're having there, Nikki. So
Well,
but
congrats on your third little one too. That's exciting.
thanks. Yeah, due December 17th. We
Oh my
are
goodness.
terrified in all of the right ways. Um, but no, it'll be really good. So, kind of, I really like that kind of talking about not everything is going to be high, right? There are going to be those levels of chaos. I think that's a perfect segue into my first question. So, Nikki, if you could just take us back to a young Nikki Wolfe, when
Yeah.
were some of the first times that you were struggling with your mental health?
So I guess we'll have to go way back and then we'll come back to really the mental health component. Um, so starting around 3 years old, my doctors discovered I have a tumor and it used to be 3, 4 times the size and it was on my face. So, we're in the hospital. Throughout early childhood would go and get surgeries and had it removed. I was a guinea pig for a drug, was going to move to Japan. All this stuff kind of started, would be taken out of school. Um, I think where a lot of my deeper rooted trauma initiated was subconsciously during that time because this tumor was very visual. Obviously, I've grown into my face and I learned to hide things and it's gone down significantly, but I have images where it's 3, 4, 5 times, it's standing out. So it's very visual. As kids, I mean, I don't know how old yours are, but we
Mhm.
can be very difficult. And I got teased every single day. Teachers would say, Nikki, spit your gum out. Did you just get hit by a softball? I played softball competitively. Did you
Mhm.
just get your wisdom teeth pulled? This happened every single day of my life for at least 15 years and multiple times a day. And then as I got older, even to being past a young adult, I mean, as an actual adult, I'd get adults asking me and just like, well, what's wrong with your face? Like just very like upfront like this. And so all this stuff started very early. I'll kind of go through this fast forward and we can dissect later if you'd like. But early teens, developed some eating disorders, a few different ones. And now looking back, I understand that there was a lot out of my control. And I think this is what goes for most addictions is there's a lot out of your control, and so you're trying to fill the void with something, whether that's drugs, alcohol, sex, food. And so looking back, that was I could control the way my body looks. And so, and even that, I was interested in health prior to that. So it started out in a healthy manner and then it became excessive. And then I realized I could control things. Developed for a few years back in the hospital for other issues, just medical issues that arose. Um, I got into, I know I'm just throwing everything out, but I think it all, it's important. I got into a relationship, pretty intense relationship, and he was an alcoholic and he was abusive and eventually like got out of that. And probably 6 years ago, I was living on my own in Los Angeles, had a great job. Same with the same company I'm with now. And I think I struggled with anxiety a little bit up to this point, but I wasn't, on medication or anything like that. I'm still in the health field. I'm passionate. Everything, if you ask anybody, what's Nikki love? It's health. It's always been that. And all of a sudden, and I mean, I guess for those listening, I mean, I think everybody that's coming on is probably aware of deep conversations, so we'll just get into it. But I didn't know what ruminating thoughts were. I didn't know what intrusive thoughts were. And so I was living in a studio on my own. And all of a sudden, in a studio, your bedroom is your kitchen, is your bathroom, is your living room. It's all one of the same. And if you've ever experienced like driving over a freeway and you're like, oh, what if I just turned off? Or you're on the 10th floor of a hotel and you're like, well, what if I just jumped off? You probably have no desire to commit suicide or take your life or anything like that. But the thought comes in your head and it's kind of freaky. And it might even push you to like, okay, I'm not even going to open that window. Like, you would never take your life. And obviously, this doesn't go for everybody. This is my experience. But you're not in a hotel every single day of your life. You're not driving over the freeway for 12 hours a day. So it's not something that kind of comes to mind very often and you can pass it off. Well, I'm in my room and I'm like, well, there's kitchen knives over there. What if I just stab myself? And it,
Mhm.
and again, I've never been depressed. I've never been suicidal ever. And I still am not, but it freaked me out.
Yeah.
I like lost it. It was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. Things spiraled. I ended up, I got to a point where I felt like I had to be spoon fed. I couldn't, in order to fall asleep, I would have panic attacks so intense that would make me pass out. And that's how I would fall asleep. I asked the landlords, which now looking back, I guess it's kind of illegal, that I wanted to get a therapy dog and they wouldn't allow it. So eventually I moved out, loved this studio. It was absolutely a dream. And so that was really hard to let go of that. Got a dog, got a roommate. I went to EMDR. I got a psychiatrist. I went to therapy twice a week. I got on medication. And again, I love holistic well-being. I love the idea of natural remedies and doing everything I can, but there comes a time and a place. And this is why I do think there is a place for Western medicine. I personally believe unless it's like a freak accident where you get in a car accident, your arm's falling off, I'm not rubbing aloe vera on it. Like, give me what I need to heal. But I think for most issues, especially acute issues, let's do everything natural that we can to before we go to the big stuff. But at this point, I got on 2 medications, did all this kind of stuff. Now, fast forward, I'm off medication. Things are great, but it was a very deep, dark, heavy season with so many learning opportunities. And luckily, I haven't gotten back into the depths of that. And I think I've learned a ton on the way, not just from my connection to God, but my husband works, he's an LCSW, so social worker. So even just conversations with him, and he's worked in the addiction field for 10, 15 years. So his
Mhm.
mindset and the things that he can contribute when even what my therapists weren't helping me with, he was able to provide wisdom that now I feel like my brain is so much more resilient, my capabilities, my ability to work through challenging moments is so much stronger. So I know that was a lot,
No,
and
it was
maybe we can
great.
unpack that.
Yeah, let's absolutely unpack that. I think there's of a lot of truth here. There's a lot of gold nuggets, and I'm really excited to start digging into those. But first, thank you. Thank you
Of
so much
course.
for sharing your story. It's just it amazes me that people are willing to get on this show and just share themselves so selflessly, so shamelessly. I just think we need more people like that, more people like you. So I'm real appreciative of you. So do you remember? So I want to do my best to pick apart everything.
Yeah.
Um, Back when you were 3, you developed or you become aware of this tumor. Do you remember being 3 years old and having these memories, or are these at that age, was that kind of stuff your parents reminded you of?
That's a great question. So I think it's a little bit of both because yes, it was 3, but it was also I was getting surgeries up until I think 5 or 6. There's
Gotcha.
obviously photos of stuff, but there was visual things that I remember. So I don't know if you've ever been in an MRI machine
Mhm.
or seen an MRI machine. It's kind of this alien-like machinery,
Mhm.
and it's kind of intimidating as an adult, let alone a very small child.
Right.
Well, you go into this machine and the tunnels fairly small to fit in. And I very vividly remember this, whether it was 3 or 5 or 6.
Mhm.
That I remember them saying, okay, you can't move your arms because if you move around, it's going to mess up the imaging. You
Mhm.
can't move your arms, and you're in there for about an hour, hour and a half. At least I was. And there's like sirens going on and off. And this is roughly 30 years ago. So I think the technology could be a little bit different now, but I've gotten
Mhm.
MRIs a few years ago and it's still pretty aggressive. But it's
Mhm.
like sirens and really loud noises, and you have headphones. Well, unfortunately for me, that's traumatizing already on its own. And then they pull you out, they give you injections and needles, and they put you back in. But since it was on my face, they had to put a cage on my face. So not only am I in this
Mhm.
tunnel that you have maybe 3 or 4 inches surrounding you. So I'm not really a claustrophobic person, but how do you not get like traumatized when you're in there? So you're in this tunnel for an hour, hour and a half. You have these crazy noises on. Then I have a cage on top of me. Then they pull you out halfway and they give you injections and needles, which I've always had issues with needles. So I very vividly remember those experiences. And then
Right.
obviously there's stories, that my mom and my dad would tell me. I mean, I remember the smell of the hospital. Like that's
Mhm.
very vivid to me. I remember going in. I remember fragments of stuff. I remember going to the kids' play area. I remember like there's a little school in the hospital. So I would go into that. I remember going to the cafeteria. So there's a
Mhm.
collection of memories that I absolutely kind of hold on to or take away.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the tumor, was it, I know you mentioned later that later in life it was a pretty big tumor. Was it that big at 3 years old, or was it smaller at that time?
Um, Obviously big enough that doctors recognized it. It grew as I got older.
Mhm.
And just to clarify too, it's benign. They call it, and we're hearing different things, benign lymphatic angioma of the parotid. So even though it's not cancerous, it's still growing. And right now we've had surgeries and protocols since I was old, when I was older, but it's too dangerous to do surgeries now because one of the surgeries actually temporarily paralyzed a nerve, which can make you look like you have a stroke.
Gotcha.
And so, obviously, at this stage of my life, the risk versus reward's not there anymore. I'm accepting of who I am and what I look like. I have a loving family like that, and it's not affecting my life. And so, I don't have a need to. But yes, it is benign. And I can't remember if I answered your question.
No, you did. You answered
Okay,
perfectly.
perfect.
Thank you. Is it
Mhm.
something, even though that it's benign, even at this point in your life, will it continue to grow, or has it kind of slowed down or stopped?
It's a good question. I think visually it's slowed down or stopped.
Mhm.
We haven't like really seen it grow. And I honestly haven't been to a specialist I mean, I've had a number of other medical conditions that have kind of preceded all of this, but it hasn't seemed to get in the way. Obviously, there's some like I can't be upside down for a long period of time, or,
Right.
chewing gum can make it a little bit hurt. When I get sick, because your lymph nodes are down here, those will
Mhm.
get swollen, and so it'll make my tumor swollen, but it really doesn't impact my life physically, emotionally, any
Good.
bit more.
Good. And good. That's really good to hear. And it's
Yeah.
obviously a testament to the work you've done. And I know we're going to dig into that later in the episode. But to continue on with your life, so you get into elementary school, you get into junior high, high school, right? You're playing the softball. You said your teachers and peers, they are asking you like what's going on with your face multiple times a day, that kind of stuff. Um, do you feel like you were, or did you have a good group of friends that were a good support system for you back in the day? Or do you feel like um, some of the factors like your tumor and maybe some of the mental health things you were wrestling with kind of inhibited you from having a good group of friends?
I honestly, looking back, I think I have one of the best childhoods. I know even from an early age, and I wasn't raised in the church. I didn't know God or anything like that, but
Mhm.
I've always sought out very good, loving relationships. I had a best friend from kindergarten to sixth grade that like die hard. She was in a Christian family, so there was always a lot of love surrounding. I remember kind of standing up for some of my friends who were bullied. My mom tells me, like, looking back, like, I would be friends with everybody, and
Yeah.
people would be friends with me. So I don't ever have an experience. It was more of like strangers who would see me. I mean, you
Mhm.
see people on the street who they have some abnormality, and especially kids, you don't know it's not appropriate to ask, or you
Right.
stare or whatnot. And so most of the time it was strangers. A lot of times, like when I went into, the softball, like the batting cages, it makes sense because you're like, oh, did you just get hit? You don't even know you've been hit. Like it wasn't in cruelty.
Good.
I'd be at the bank and they would see something and they're like, oh, just like striking up conversations. Like I would say 95, 90, probably more than that percent of the time, it was all just general curiosity, somewhat concern.
Hmm.
And then some people, I think it was always concern and curiosity, just some people wouldn't ask in like the most appropriate way. Like, oh, what's wrong with your face? Like that was
Right.
seldom. I mean, I was called chipmunk. I was teased that as a kid. So there was that group, like the mean girls, and I
Yeah.
remember them to this day.
Hmm.
But it wasn't that much of like the meanness. It was more just the
Good.
constant repetition that there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And in those moments where you did come home and maybe the emotions were high, the mean girls had just said something, maybe there was a buildup of those comments, whether out of, love and, concern or not. How are your parents at holding space for you when you had those heavy emotions?
So my parents divorced when I was two. They have always prioritized me and my sister, did everything. We had busy lives. They had busy lives. I honestly think I built this, if I could look back, like this independent resiliency that I don't know if I came home and I complained about that. I think it was just such a normal part of my day that I
Hmm.
didn't think to come home and report on that. It was other stuff. Like, it was other, like, I was like, okay. Cause I remember as an adult, I'd go get my nails done with my mom and my sister, and somebody would say something. And it was like, I feel like those were some of the rare experiences that they heard people ask me because they're never around when they hear people bring it up. Like, what's wrong with your face or what happened?
Hmm.
And I also don't think I really brought it up to them a lot. I, I, I mean, I can't jump into my 8-year-old self and really pick that apart. There very
Right.
much could have been, but I think there was just, again, I had a busy childhood. I had a lot going on. I did really well in school. I loved school. I loved sports. I had, great environment. I just don't know if that was like came home and chatted about that. I think
Yeah.
and maybe, yeah, looking back, it's like I feel like I've always tried to focus on what's going well, cup half full. We came home and like, how did school go? Like we didn't
Yeah,
focus on the heaviness. Now, granted, that came later, um, where
for
we could
sure.
have those discussions, but I don't think there was ever, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's hard to look back and know that. But I
Yeah.
know that if I ever were to bring it up, I feel very competent or like very confident that they would have been able to have that conversation.
Good. That's good. That's really good to have that healthy support system. And also, what a testament to the perspective of life, right? Like what you choose to focus on, right? You choose to focus on the positive. And even in our conversation, you say, I remember mostly positive things, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, what a testament to positivity and perception and perspective. That's awesome. So, at what point kind of did you decide that health was going to be your career choice?
I don't, I knew it was the thing that like lit me up and, I would think about very young. I know middle school I was kind of interested in it, but really high school is when I really started getting interested in like understanding nutrition and understanding food or like exercise.
Hmm.
That really started in high school. And I think when I look back and I asked you know, when your parents ask you what you want to be when you grow up, I always had a teacher. So like an educator, which I've done in my career
Hmm.
in many ways and still continue to do. I don't know if there was, I don't know, it was just always my passion. I think there was different outlets of how that looks, but something always connected to the health field. So I guess maybe in high school, just kind of that was my interest.
Ah, super cool. And what area of health did you want to get into?
Didn't really kind of, I wasn't sure. I mean, I went to UC Santa Barbara with a film and media studies degree to begin with. So clearly, I just didn't really have much of a direction.
Hmm.
Later on, I ended up graduating with public health, which in retrospect, I wouldn't have done that. I would have probably gone into like become a naturopathic doctor, or, even then, before knowing about naturopathy, I'd probably would have been become a dietitian or something like
Hmm.
that. So I guess, know the direction of what is specifically a career. I just knew the health industry.
Okay, that's super cool. And okay, so at this point too, so you're getting into your careers, you're doing these things, um, you start to have these intrusive and ruminating thoughts. And I'm real appreciative that you bring those up because I think every human experiences them. Absolutely. And so you get to, and you were very open and candid about it, where you started having these thoughts and these experiences, right? And you got to this point in your life, right, where you're like, I'm done. I'm done with these ruminating thoughts and intrusive things like controlling me. So I think that segues perfectly into my second question for you, Nikki, which is the heroine's journey. So for those just tuning in, the heroine's journey or the hero's journey is essentially an extreme moment or a pivotal trial, something that the hero or the heroine has to face in their life, right, to help ultimately make them better. So Nikki, can you please describe for us this extreme moment or this pivotal trial that you went through?
Yeah, and I'll clarify too. For me, I don't think there was that as much confidence of like, I'm done with this. It wasn't like a foot in the ground, like, screw this, I'm done. It was more of, I need to get to a safe place or I will die. Because I
Yeah.
was so fearful that this thought was controlling me that it
Hmm.
would actually happen. And so it was more of, I have no other option
Right.
or I will take my life. And so I wouldn't even say there was the confidence there of like, I'm done. Being in that studio, I remember just like putting my back up against the fridge and sliding down. And, at this point, I slowly had a relationship with God and I'm like, get me out of this. And I was like, where are you? You hear
Hmm.
that metaphor of you see the footprints in the sand and, he's saying, I'm butchering this, but it's like, well, where were you? And he's like, I was carrying you the whole time. And I was like,
Yeah.
screw that. I didn't
The
feel that at all.
the two
Like
yeah,
yeah,
the two sets of footsteps. Yep.
I was like, I didn't feel that at all. I felt like I was completely on my own in this. Um, and really the, the look for help was so that I didn't take my life because I was so afraid. I was so debilitated. I was like, I'm gonna have to quit my job. I'm gonna have to move home with my parents. They're gonna have to feed me. Like it was more of, I need to get to a safe place. And
Yeah.
so obviously, I know I'm smart at this point. I know I have resources. I have the funds to be able to go do this. I was able to take some time off work. And so it's like, let me dive into everything I can. Let me reach out. I had my two friends, and they came over for a weekend, and one of them, I wasn't ready for her to go home. I didn't feel safe enough to be home alone. And so she stayed an extra night. And I remember the next day sending her home with every knife in my house, the razor blades, tools, anything like that could be harm.
Hmm.
Again, never been suicidal, not depressed, still am not. It was just an intrusive thoughts, and I don't know how much you've spoken on intrusive thoughts or ruminating thoughts, but for those listening, these are thoughts that are so intense. Ruminating, obviously, it sits in your brain and you can't release it. Intrusive is like something so intense, so vulgar, so wild that it doesn't even feel like it's a part of you. And I've never thought any of these before. And so it was a combination of intrusive and ruminating thoughts. And I'm like, wait, do I want to take my life? It was so, so, so scary. So I did everything I could. Again, I got, psychiatry, got on two meds. I think for a while I was doing therapy 3 times a week. So I just really dove into everything I possibly could do. And, thriving didn't happen for a while. It was merely, let's just survive. Let's do what we can to get back to a steady place. And it took time. And, obviously there's certain lessons, and I'm sure we'll chat about. Um, but I needed to put things into place that would get me to a safe spot.
Yeah, which is so important. And I'm curious about those things that you put in place, right? These skills essentially, right? That you've had to use. Do you still use a lot of these skills today?
So, I mean, I guess put things in place is, the appointments. Like there's that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And then there's also the thoughts and learning lessons. Was there one in particular you're talking about kind of both of them together?
I was thinking more about some of the skills and the tools that you use to kind of help keep yourself in a good spot so that you
Yeah.
don't have those intrusive or ruminating thoughts, or when they do come, how you manage them in a healthy way.
Totally. I think this was practiced quite a bit. That, to be fair, intrusive thoughts and ruminating thoughts don't really debilitate me or don't really come very frequently. And it's interesting. I remember, because I know it's a very common experience with new mothers, to have intense ruminating thoughts, intrusive thoughts after they deliver, that
Mhm.
they want to throw the baby off or they don't want to take care of it. And so I was kind of going into this anticipating, like ready for the worst, absolutely ready. I knew I had my team. I had people there if I needed, if I didn't feel safe, I had all
Mhm.
that stuff. So much to be thankful for that I did not experience any of that. Quite the opposite. Felt very loving, very safe, everything like that. So I didn't experience that. The ruminating thoughts don't come often, but when they do come, that I've learned is the beauty of life is to experience the full spectrum of all emotions. That's happiness, joy, but it's also sorrow, pain,
Mhm.
fear. Like we can't go in and assume every day is going to be joyous.
Mhm.
We might know, okay, today I'm not going to be like super happy and high, but when sometimes we get that fearful spot, we want to push it away. And it's really that resistance that actually makes that emotion heightened. And so I remember, I can't remember if it was my therapist, but they're like, when anxiety comes in, I want you to acknowledge it instead of pushing it away and like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable. Hey, I see you, anxiety. You can sit in the room. You're not going to have a seat at my table, but you can sit in the room. The mere act of pushing away an uncomfortable feeling gives it more strength and more power. And so now, if there are times of anxiety, I kind of let it, I have to accept it of like, okay, this is part of being human. Like,
Yeah.
same with depression, same with anger, same with these other things. And obviously, we have tools, but first, starting this recognition that, like, this is a part of being human, is experiencing all these emotions. One other major thing, and I think to that, is being comfortable in the uncomfortable. I think a lot of us get extremely uncomfortable with those feelings. Absolutely, it's uncomfortable feelings. But the more you can create this, repeat these things and sit in it, you start getting comfortable with the pain and with the uncomfort. And it's like almost oh my gosh, what's his name? David Goggins. He's very comfortable in the uncomfortable. I don't know if you know him much. You
Mhm.
can look, he's an extremist with this kind of stuff, but he like seeks out the discomfort. And, that's one side of the spectrum, but I think there are little bits to learn from that. But I think the other major thing, and this is really what I picked from my husband, if I have thoughts, or if I feel like I'm having a heart attack or whatever's coming, your thoughts don't mean they're true. And just because it's in your head doesn't mean it's a part of who you are. Feelings aren't always facts. And so to remember and recognize that you might have some wild things that come through your head, learn to let it go because it doesn't mean it's who you are. It doesn't mean it's truth. And so that's something that I had to hold on to. And I remind myself when some weird off the wall thoughts come in that can kind of debilitate me for a little bit. Just because you're having a feeling doesn't mean it's true. So those were kind of two pieces that have always helped me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that everyone, especially in the world of mental health, they have different ways of dealing with and feeling emotions, right? Like the stuff that I typically use, or the statement I tell myself is, okay, this emotion is energy in motion. And then what I do is I picture it as a leaf falling down into a river and allowing the river to take it,
Mhm.
right? And I can embrace it, I can accept it, I can acknowledge it, but once it's out of my view, I'm good. So how long did it take you practicing these skills of emotional awareness and acceptance before it started becoming kind of a second nature, easy thing for you?
That might be a little hard to answer because I think there was a combination, whether there's, because I think I probably have undiagnosed ADHD or ADD.
Mhm.
And so I think there's always been possibly some sort of nervous system imbalance or miswiring in some aspect. Maybe there's a heightened neurotransmitters going on or things like happening. And so I did all these practices all together. So it's hard to kind of pick and choose, okay, this helped me with this. I mean, I was on 2 medications. I was
Mhm.
doing therapy. I was doing psychiatry. I was implementing these tools. I
Mhm.
was getting out in sunshine. I was spending my time in, good community. So it was a facet of all these different things. Now, if I just did those things on its own, it might have taken a lot longer. So I definitely think it's important to combine all these different factors. But I mean, maybe 2 years to, gosh, maybe a year to start feeling safe.
Mhm.
2 years to kind of really start feeling myself again. Um, and I think kind of after that, I mean, I met my husband fairly soon after. So obviously that supported, and that was another integration that helped
Mhm.
with my journey. Um, but yeah, maybe 2 years if I
Okay,
had to
that's
look back.
I think that's a really important answer that you have there, right? The good community, the therapy, the medication, the skills, the therapists, the EMDR, is that stuff you were doing frequently for this first year or two as you were going through this process?
Definitely for the first year. I think I did therapy. I think at the very, very beginning, it was 3 times a week. And then it dropped down to twice and then 1 time a week. Obviously on the medication. So that's starting to change kind of the wiring and really slow down the thoughts.
Mhm.
So that made a big difference. I was always very proactive of like getting out of the house, scheduling time, whether it's an activity, a sport, this, that, doing stuff, even if I didn't feel like it, and I would schedule it out so that there wasn't an opportunity to like, no, I just want to stay in bed, which to be fair, at this point, being home alone was more fearful. Like, like I think individuals who are depressed, they want to stay in bed. I know I'm generalizing. Where I didn't want to be alone. So I needed to get out and I needed, different opportunities to be out and about, which ultimately helped a lot of things.
That's awesome, and I'm really grateful that we kind of touched on this subject of a year or two because so often, especially with younger generations, right, that I need to have it now mentality, that instant gratification. I think it's important to talk about how you can't get true lasting life change in one therapy session, one skill, over the course of a month. That really does take time, consistency, and repetition. I'm curious, out of all of these skills that you used, right, the EMDR, the medications, the lessons, the connection with the good people, what would you say are some of the most important foundational things that you did?
It's weird because again, I work for a supplement company, so I'm very much in the natural field.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think my first go-to was you got to get in order to be able to heal and thrive, you got to get into a safe place. If you do
Mm.
not feel safe enough to work on talk therapy, to bring up trauma, you're not going to move the needle. And for me, getting on medication, and again, I mean, I'm anti a lot of things. I don't vaccinate my kids, all this stuff,
Right.
but I had to get to a safe place so that I could do the work. And I
Mm.
knew I wanted to get off of them. I wasn't really in a rush, but I was in such a scary, scary place that that was my only option. So if you are in such a dark, heavy spot, you do what you can, whether that means quit your job, whether that means move home if you have a good, family community where you feel like you could feel safe there. Putting yourself in a spot that you feel most comfortable, most safe, most at home so that you can work on all the other factors. Because I don't think if I was constantly just cortisol or heightened, I wouldn't be able to do all these other components. So for me, that would probably be the first. Um, I think community was a huge one,
Mhm.
whether it's your church, whether it's I was in the sports league. And so you're getting the combination of community, but you're also getting exercise and the endorphins and the sunshine.
Mhm.
There's a lot of those different factors. Moving my body, I was constantly like, all right, let me create a healthy distraction. I'm not the type of person that pushes things under the rug. I almost am like, let's dig too much. So I wasn't concerned of these healthy distractions because that was the first time in my life that I was like, a therapist once told me, so you have your analogy or your visual, which I think is a very important thing, is to have a visual when you're in those moments of the leaf. For me, it was opening, like if I had a thought, opening up the book, putting the thought in the book and shutting it and putting it on the shelf. Because sometimes with my type of brain, you're like, well, I can't let go of that thought. It's still going to be there. Like you know what I mean? I have to work through it.
Right.
You don't have to right now. We're not saying we're throwing it away. We're not shredding it. We're just going to put it in the book for now and put it on the shelf. We can deal with that later. So for me, that was a really good visual that I didn't have to like, whether it's this OCD where I had to process it right now. I didn't have to. I said, okay, we'll get to this at some point, but right now, let's find something healthier to do and spend on our time. This is very much something that my husband taught me is because I think, with certain treatments, with talk therapy, you talk a lot, you vent a lot, but are we getting to a solution? Are we providing actual actionable tips to help you out of it? And for some, that works really well. For some, it doesn't. And one thing that he gave me that when you are in your head the most, when it's so heavy, get out of your head into somebody else's heart. Go make somebody else important. Because I think, especially as women, especially if we struggle with mental health, we want to talk about it. There's a place for that. There absolutely is. But if we're ruminating and we can't, we're spiraling, pause, call up a friend. And instead of saying, okay, this is what I'm struggling, again, this is my experience, instead of, venting about something else, when you're staying in that depth, you're staying in that trauma. Hey, Brittany, how's your day? Tell me about it. You might get distracted. You might realize somebody else, like you might be able to help somebody else. And the more you start practicing it, it becomes a part of who you are. And you're able to make this switch and this pivot and get out of your head and to go help somebody else. It doesn't mean that you're not going to deal with what you have going on. It's just a fix to kind of calm down the heightened response, focus and love on someone else. And in turn, you'll still continue to do the work and relieve your own emotions and your, trauma state. It'll happen. Like it's not like you're pushing it, to the side. But for me, that was something that was monumental, was especially for somebody who like I was always a talker and like me. That was one of the biggest things.
That reminds me a lot of that scriptural verse. You're only in the service of your fellow being. Like when you're in the service of your fellow being, you're only in the service of your God.
Hmm.
And I just love that. And I think that's so cool. And what a beautiful way to get out of your head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So it sounds like you're thriving at this point in your life. And congratulations to you, Nikki, for getting to this point. I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, of course, it's awesome. So looking back at all of the things you've had to wade through, right? I know we didn't talk about it much, but the eating disorder, the tumor, the intrusive thoughts, the ruminating thoughts, all of these things that you've had to experience. What can you appreciate about your journey up to this point in your life?
Well, if to use another kind of analogy, is the refiners, I think it's in the Bible, but it's this concept of like is it a blacksmith or a goldsmith, where he has this gold and there's dirt and clumps all surrounding it. In order to see the beauty and the perfection of the gold, you have to chip away and you have to hammer and you have to put it in the heat and apply more pressure. And eventually, after all this heat and this pressure and this turmoil, you pull it out. And this is this perfect shiny gold in the reflection of its creator, which we know is, God holding that. But
Mm.
I think looking back is building resiliency is so crucial, is so pivotal for a healthy life mindset to be able to raise children to know that life isn't going to be sit in that, like, but those are moments of opportunity and growth that you are strong enough, you are capable enough to work through this, to get through the difficult moments. I think resiliency is so, so important. I think even right now, I think we are, as a society, trying to find more ways to get comfortable. Let's make a lazy boy. Let's make convenient meals. How can we make everything as comfortable and convenient as possible? But you are stripping people of that privilege of learning and growing in resiliency when we are handing things over, when we're giving our kids the answer immediately and they don't have to work for it. I think that work, and the challenges are so monumental for our character, for our growth. Again, just because in life there's going to be millions and millions of opportunities where we're going to deal with hardships, and to have that resiliency, that capability of overcoming difficult moments, I think is incredibly crucial. So to look back, that's the biggest thing that I gained from this is I feel like my resiliency has grown, has strengthened, and now I can look back when I am in a hard season that I have overcame harder days and I'm going to overcome this. And I just, I don't want to strip my children of that ability. I'm grateful for my mindset on that. And I know it'll continue to support me in future seasons.
I love that. That's such a deep level of appreciation, Nikki. Thank you so much. And kind of the question that came to mind for me is for these people that are starting to develop resiliency, right? That are stepping out of this instant gratification, this easy, this everything is given to us mindset. What are some simple practices people can do to develop resiliency?
I mean, I think a very tangible way without even thinking, well, there could be a physical and an emotional. So next time an uncomfortable feeling comes in, let it sit. Hey, and you can even give it a name, do whatever you need to do. If it's anxiety, if it's fear, if it's anger, hey, I see you, anger. You can stay in the room, but I'm not going to give you a seat at the table. I mean, I'm not going to give you a ton of attention. You're not going to get priority. I think accepting that and like, okay, you're here. I don't need to push you away. Truly in the moment, you will feel relief. That resistant, that's when it continues to heighten. When you can just accept that this is a part of being human, I think you'll notice that change. Second thing, as far as a physical ability to start trying this, how can you find ways and opportunities throughout your day to get a little uncomfortable? Maybe instead of sleeping in, it's getting up a little bit early. Maybe if you're a runner, can I go a little bit further? Seek opportunities to just get a little bit more uncomfortable. That is building resiliency. And I know those are just two ways, but else can you find opportunities to do this? And it'll build up over time. It'll strengthen your ability to overcome difficult moments. When we constantly back out or give ourselves excuses of like, this is too painful, this is too uncomfortable, how are we going to be able to get through some of the difficult seasons of losing a parent, of, whatever that is? The more we can find little opportunities and uncomfortability, I think the better it will be for our well-being.
I love that. I'm working on a book right now called The Power of 1%, where it talks about how you have to grow by 1% in one area of your life at a time, right? And you do that 1% until it becomes a goal. And I think what you're talking about perfectly aligns with that, right? How can I run 1% more? Or how could I change how I communicate 1% better? How can I show up a little bit better, right? How can I have harder conversations in a more loving way? Right. Yeah, I think that's so powerful and so true. So yeah, I guys, if you're listening, Nikki just shared with you one of the most beautiful truths that will help you grow long term and effectively. So like if you didn't fully understand that, go listen to it again and again and again until
Mhm.
until it clicks, because that was so true. Nikki, thank you so much. So my last big question for you. Um, for those just getting into the realm of mental health, for those just learning that they need help, they need to grow, what advice do you have for those people specifically?
Ask for help if you are not in a space to be able to do it on your own. And again, when this all started, I was very good with my job. I'm, you know, I don't know, 30 or 29 years old, so I'm fully capable. If you do not have the willingness, or not the willingness, the ability to seek out help, if you feel so paralyzed, ask for help, whether that's from a parent, a loved one, a colleague, whatever that looks like. Um, and I think knowing that it won't and it doesn't have to be this dark and heavy forever. Um, there's always hope. There's always a way out, whatever that looks like. And you know, I'm a believer, so I believe everything is kind of laid out and we all have abilities and a story to help others. And so to kind of leverage what you're going through and how can you utilize that to help someone else, whether that is mental health, whatever that might be. Is there an again, it just comes back to getting out of your own head. I think we are naturally so selfish. I'm incredibly selfish. But the way that I see most growth and most fruitfulness is to get out of my own way, to get out of myself, and to go love on someone else. And I think you're going to see the fruits from that happen.
Super powerful. Well, Niki, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show, to humanize yourself, to celebrate yourself, and to share your wonderful journey and share these wonderful skills and lessons with these viewers. So tell us a little bit about kind of like your coaching, your podcast. Where can people find you? All that stuff.
Absolutely. So, I host a health podcast. So it's called Wellness for Life. And so I bring on experts in the industry and we talk about all different kinds of conversations from eye health, cardiovascular, lots of mental health as well, and how we can support our bodies holistically through supplements, diet, and lifestyle. I like to break down the science, but then provide actionable tips. I don't really do any public coaching right now, just because I also work for a big company and I'm wearing a lot of hats. But I do have a social media page, Niki Wolfe Wellness, where I just share insights. And so, yeah, I would say those are probably the two best places. I also have a website, nikiwolfe.com, where you can see a little bit of my story in my About Me. I have the photos of me as a kid in the hospital, and you could, see how big my tumor was and just the things that have changed. And I dive a little bit into kind of the story that I've gone through. But those would probably be the three top places to find me and the work that I'm doing.
That's super cool. What's the name of your podcast?
Wellness for Life.
Wellness for Life. That's right. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, yeah, I'll make sure everyone, if you're listening and you want to go check out Niki's stuff, that's going to be in the description of the show. No matter where you're at, it's going to be there. So definitely go and check Niki out, check out her website, go make sure to follow her on her social medias, make sure to follow her podcast. Guys, what she's doing is truly golden, and what she's giving to people is invaluable. So it's definitely the right place to go. So Niki, last time I want to express such gratitude for you coming on my show.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here and just be able to have an opportunity to chat with some of your listeners and hopefully provided a little bit of encouragement that they have what it takes to make it through.
Yeah, you absolutely did. So
Perfect.
again, thank you so much. And everyone listening up to this point, thank you so much for tuning in. It means the world to Niki and I that you're willing to hear her story, that you've tagged along this far, and that you've made it to the end. So we're super appreciative of you. If you haven't already, please make sure to share this with somebody that you know could benefit from the lessons today that Niki was so willing to share with us. And guys, please understand that I am always looking for guests to come on the show. If you want to come on, no story is too big, no name is too small. If you have a story, I want to share it all, you can contact me at chase@thewellnesscenter.life. If you want to know more about what I'm doing on my day-to-day basis, you can go to www.thewellnesscenter.life, where red light therapy recalibrates every single cell in your body, one session at a time. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the flip side. Peace out.